Welcome to our exploration of government privileges in legal proceedings and the fundamental right to know. In today's world, transparency in governance is more crucial than ever. Openness acts as a safeguard against administrative misconduct, ensuring that power is not abused and that citizens remain informed. We'll journey through the evolution of the right to information, its legal foundations, and the mechanisms established to protect public interest. From the United States to India, the pursuit of open government has shaped modern administrative law. Let's begin by understanding why the right to know is central to democracy and good governance. Openness in government isn't just a modern trend, it's a powerful check on administrative power. When government activities are transparent, it becomes much harder for misconduct to go unnoticed. Countries like the USA, Australia, and New Zealand have championed this principle, recognizing that access to information is essential for democracy. The goal is simple: ensure that governmental actions are not hidden in secrecy. By granting individuals the right to access information, we foster accountability and trust between the state and its citizens. This foundation sets the stage for legal frameworks that protect the right to know. American Constitution, though the oldest written constitution, does not explicitly mention the right to information. However, the U.S. Supreme Court has interpreted the First Amendment to include this right, especially where openness is a tradition and access enhances the functioning of government. The Administrative Procedure Act of 1946 was the first step, offering limited access to executive information. Recognizing its shortcomings, Congress enacted the Freedom of Information Act (FOIA) in 1966, granting every citizen a legally enforceable right to access government files and documents. This marked a significant leap toward transparency. While the Freedom of Information Act was groundbreaking, it included several exemptions. Information related to national defense, internal agency use, trade secrets, personal medical files, and law enforcement records could be withheld. In 1974, Congress amended the Act to require disclosure of segregable portions of records, set mandatory response times, and streamline procedures for appeals and costs. Interestingly, most requests under FOIA come from business executives, lawyers, and journalists, rather than the general public. These amendments aim to balance transparency with the need to protect sensitive information. Judiciary in the United States has echoed Congress's commitment to transparency. Justice Douglas famously stated that secrecy in government is fundamentally anti-democratic, perpetuating bureaucratic errors. Open debate based on full information is vital to the nation's health. To further enhance openness, Congress passed the Sunshine Act in 1977, ensuring access to federal government meetings. These legal and judicial measures collectively reinforce the principle that government should serve the people through transparency and accountability. Contrast to the U.S., England's laws historically emphasized secrecy. The Official Secrets Acts of 1911, 1920, and 1939 criminalized unauthorized disclosures of official information. However, recognizing the need for openness in a democratic society, the Franks Committee recommended reforms, including limiting criminal sanctions to major national interests such as defense, security, and foreign relations. These recommendations aim to strike a balance between necessary secrecy and the public's right to know. 1993, England took a step toward transparency by publishing a white paper on open government and introducing a voluntary code of practice for providing information. However, this code lacked the force of statutory law. The Local Government Access to Information Act, 1985, provided some legal rights to information at the local level, allowing greater public access to council meetings and documents. Despite these advances, many exemptions remained and individuals had limited legal recourse if denied information. The push for greater openness continues amid growing public pressure. India's Official Secrets Act of 1923 makes unauthorized disclosure and use of official information a criminal offense unless expressly authorized. While courts in India and England have rejected the idea that the government has an absolute right to withhold documents, secrecy remains prevalent. The Indian Constitution does not explicitly guarantee the right to information, but its philosophy supports openness. Articles 19A and 21, which protect freedom of speech and the right to life, are seen as foundations for the right to know. The Supreme Court has recognized this right as essential for participatory democracy. Supreme Court of India has played a pivotal role in elevating the right to know. In the landmark case S.B. Gupta v. Union of India, the court held that the right to know is implicit in the right to free speech and expression under Article 19(1)(a). This includes the right to seek, receive, and impart information, as well as the right to reply and access commercial information. By narrowly interpreting government privileges to withhold documents, the court expanded public access to information, laying the groundwork for future legislative reforms. Despite judicial support, legislative action has been slow. States like Goa, Tamil Nadu, and Rajasthan enacted laws to ensure public access to information, though with various restrictions. The central government faced pressure to pass a comprehensive law, leading to the introduction of the Freedom of Information Bill in 1999. However, the bill was criticized for its numerous exemptions and lack of effective appeal mechanism. Still, it marked a step forward in recognizing the right to information as a legal entitlement. Press Council of India Bill 1996 outlined three main exemptions: information affecting national security, state integrity, or public order, information unrelated to public activity and constituting an invasion of privacy, and trade or commercial secrets protected by law. The government bill added further exemptions such as cabinet papers and legal advice, which critics argued granted excessive immunity to officials. While some progress was made, including greater transparency in public recruitment, the law was seen as inadequate in ensuring true openness. Practice bureaucratic hurdles often impede public access to information in India. Secrecy persists not only in government but also in public bodies, both statutory and non-statutory. Routine reports on social issues are frequently kept confidential, and what is released depends on the discretion of officials. This culture of secrecy stifles debate and feedback, increasing the risk of abuse of authority. While some secrecy is justified for national security or sensitive matters, excessive secrecy undermines democracy and accountability. Recurring challenge is balancing the right to know with the right to privacy, especially for public figures. In India, the experience suggests that privacy should not be used as a pretext to suppress information relevant to public duties. Legislation is needed to clearly define what information should remain confidential and to hold the government accountable for secrecy claims. This approach would strengthen open government and promote accountability, ensuring that secrecy is justified only in exceptional cases. As governments expanded their roles, the need for mechanisms to address public grievances became clear. The Ombudsman, first established in Sweden in 1809, emerged as a watchdog of the administration. This independent, nonpartisan officer investigates complaints of maladministration, corruption, and injustice. The Ombudsman can criticize and report to the legislature but cannot reverse administrative action. The concept has since been adopted by many countries, including Norway and New Zealand, as a means to keep administrative power in check. India, the idea of an ombudsman, known as Lokpal, was first proposed in the 1960s. The Administrative Reforms Commission recommended establishing this office to provide citizens with a means to address grievances against the government. The Lokpal is intended to be independent, impartial, and equivalent in status to the highest judicial offices. The Lokpal investigates complaints of injustice, corruption, and favoritism, including those involving ministers and senior officials. The goal is to ensure that government remains accountable and responsive to the people. Lokpal is appointed by the President of India in consultation with the Chief Justice, Speaker of the Lok Sabha, and the Leader of Opposition. The Lokpal serves a 5-year term and cannot be reappointed more than once. Strict qualifications ensure independence. The Lokpal cannot be a member of parliament or state legislature, must resign from any office of profit, and sever ties with political parties or profession. Salary and benefits are on par with the Chief Justice of India, emphasizing the office's high status and impartiality. Lokpal is empowered to investigate actions taken by ministers or secretaries in their administrative capacity. Investigations can be initiated based on written complaints or on the Lokpal's own knowledge. The Lokpal examines cases of injustice, corruption, or undue favor, and even ex-ministers or MPs can be investigated if their misconduct is recent. The Lokpal's authority is designed to ensure that those in power are held accountable for their actions, reinforcing the principles of justice and transparency. Despite its broad mandate, the Lokpal cannot investigate certain matters. These include actions affecting foreign relations, extradition, crime investigation, or security of the state. Matters related to commercial contracts, appointments, or awards are also excluded unless there are allegations of harassment or undue delay. These limitations are intended to protect sensitive areas of governance, while allowing the Lokpal to focus on issues of public interest and administrative justice. Investigations by the Lokpal are conducted in private, with procedures determined by the Lokpal based on the circumstances. The Lokpal has the powers of a civil court, including summoning witnesses, requiring document production, receiving evidence on affidavits, and requisitioning public records. While proceedings are judicial in nature, the Lokpal cannot punish for contempt. These powers enable thorough investigations while maintaining procedural fairness and confidentiality. Several Indian states established their own versions of the Ombudsman, known as Lokayukta. States like Bihar, Maharashtra, Rajasthan, and Karnataka have enacted Lokayukta statutes. The Lokayukta is appointed by the governor, often in consultation with the Chief Justice and opposition leaders. Qualifications mirror those of the Lokpal, ensuring independence and impartiality. The Lokayukta investigates complaints against ministers, secretaries, and public servants, providing an additional layer of accountability at the state level. Lokayukta holds office for 5 years, unless removed earlier for misconduct or incapacity. Removal requires an inquiry by a Supreme Court or High Court judge and approval by a 2/3 majority in the state legislature. The Lokayukta can investigate actions by ministers, secretaries, and public servants, but the state government may exclude certain complaints from its jurisdiction. Annual reports on performance are submitted to the governor, ensuring ongoing oversight and transparency. Proposal for Lokpal and Lokayukta institutions dates back to 1968, but legislative delays and administrative changes slowed their implementation. Interim arrangements, such as the secretary in the Department of Personnel acting as commissioner, eventually gave way to the establishment of the Department of Administrative Reforms and Public Grievances. Today, the Lokayukta functions in 13 states including Andhra Pradesh, Assam, Gujarat, and Punjab, reflecting the ongoing commitment to administrative accountability. Central Vigilance Commission (CVC) was established on the recommendation of the Santhanam Committee to combat corruption in public administration. The CVC oversees anti-corruption organizations, including the Directorate of General Complaints, Directorate of Vigilance, and the Central Police Organization. Its jurisdiction covers government servants in ministries, public sector undertakings, and nationalized banks. The CVC focuses on cases involving senior officials, ensuring that high-level corruption is addressed effectively. Central Vigilance Commissioner is appointed by the President of India and enjoys security of tenure similar to members of the Union Public Service Commission. Originally, the term was 6 years, later reduced to 2. After leaving office, the commissioner cannot accept government or political employment. Removal or suspension is possible only after a Supreme Court inquiry and recommendation. These provisions ensure the CVC's independence and integrity in overseeing anti-corruption efforts. CVC receives complaints from individuals, the press, parliamentarians, audit reports, and the Central Bureau of Investigation (CBI). It may refer cases to the relevant ministry, request CBI inquiries, or direct the CBI to register and investigate cases. The CVC's powers include investigating impropriety, corruption, and misconduct among civil servants. Coordination with state vigilance commissions ensures that complaints are addressed at the appropriate level, promoting a unified approach to combating corruption. Central Bureau of Investigation (CBI) assists the CVC in investigating corruption cases. However, the CVC has expressed concern over the CBI's involvement in non-corruption cases, which can dilute its effectiveness. The Supreme Court in the Jane Hawala case recommended separating major investigative agencies from executive control, placing the CBI under the administrative control of the CVC. This shift aimed to enhance the independence and focus of anti-corruption efforts. In 1998, the government issued an ordinance to reform the CVC, making it a 4-member body and opening membership beyond bureaucrats. The single directive requiring prior permission for investigations was removed, and the Secretary Personnel's membership was deleted. These reforms aimed to strengthen the CVC's independence and effectiveness. However, the true impact of these changes depends on the commitment of government, citizens, and institutions to uphold integrity in public life. While institutions like the CVC play a crucial role, they cannot single-handedly eliminate corruption. Their effectiveness relies on the earnestness of all stakeholders, government, citizens, and organizations to maintain ethical standards. The CVC acts as a facilitator and coordinator, but rooting out deep-seated corruption requires a collective commitment to transparency, accountability, and good governance. Commission of Inquiry Act, 1952, empowers the government to appoint commissions to investigate matters of public importance. These commissions can be established by government initiative or by legislative resolution. Their role is to conduct thorough inquiries and report findings, ensuring that significant issues receive proper scrutiny. The Act provides a legal framework for transparent and accountable investigations into public concern. Missions of inquiry possess powers similar to civil courts. They can summon witnesses, require document production, receive evidence on affidavits, and requisition public records. The government may extend additional powers as needed. Commissions can enter premises to seize relevant documents, subject to legal safeguards. Proceedings are considered judicial, and offenses committed during inquiries are handled by magistrate. These robust powers enable commissions to conduct effective and impartial investigations. After completing an inquiry, the commission submits its report to the government, which must lay the report before the legislature within 6 months, along with a memorandum of action taken. This requirement ensures that findings are not suppressed and that the government is held accountable for its response. The process promotes transparency and provides a check on potential government inaction or cover-ups. Missions of inquiry have the authority to regulate their own procedures, including setting times and places for hearings and deciding whether to hold sessions in public or private. They may act even if some members are absent or if vacancies exist. The government can make rules regarding the commission's terms, inquiry procedures, and powers, ensuring flexibility and adaptability to different situations. No legal proceedings can be initiated against the government, the commission, its members, or those acting under their direction for actions taken in good faith under the Act. This immunity encourages thorough and honest investigations without fear of litigation. It also covers the publication of reports and proceedings, further protecting the integrity of the inquiry process. India has seen several high-profile commissions of inquiry, such as the Sudhai Ranjan Das Commission investigating allegations against Punjab's chief minister. These inquiries are typically held in private to avoid public excitement and ensure a fair atmosphere. Only charges with prima facie substance are subjected to regular inquiry, maintaining the seriousness and credibility of the process. Missions have the power to fix their own procedures, including deciding on public or private hearings. They can compel attendance, administer oaths, and allow cross-examination of witnesses. Parties may be represented by counsel, ensuring that all sides are heard. These procedural safeguards uphold the principles of natural justice and fairness throughout the inquiry. Proceedings before commissions are deemed judicial, meaning offenses like perjury or contempt are treated seriously. The commission can refer cases to magistrates for prosecution. This judicial character reinforces the authority of the commission and ensures that inquiries are conducted with the same rigor as court proceedings. Guiding principle for commissions of inquiry is public interest. Inquiries are usually held in private to prevent undue excitement and ensure a conducive atmosphere for investigation. The focus remains on uncovering the truth and addressing matters of significant public importance, rather than sensationalism. The government has the authority to make rules for the functioning of commissions, covering aspects like terms of office, inquiry procedures, and powers. These rules ensure that commissions operate efficiently and consistently, adapting to the needs of each inquiry while maintaining legal standards. Notable example is the inquiry into allegations against Punjab's Chief Minister, Sardar Pratap Singh Khairan. The commission led by Sardar Ranjan Das investigated 21 specific allegations submitted by opposition leaders. The inquiry was held in camera, with powers to compel witnesses, administer oaths, and allow legal representation. This case illustrates the thoroughness and seriousness with which commissions address matters of public importance. Pairing approaches across countries reveals varying balances between openness and secrecy. While the US and some democracies prioritize transparency, others like England and India have historically leaned toward secrecy, gradually moving toward greater openness. These differences reflect unique legal traditions, political cultures, and public expectations, but the global trend is toward more transparent governance. Public demand for transparency has been a driving force behind legal reforms. In both England and India, mounting popular pressure and citizen activism have pushed governments to reconsider secrecy and adopt more open policies. Citizen charters, advocacy groups, and the media play vital roles in holding authorities accountable and advocating for the right to know. Bhopal gas tragedy is a stark reminder of the consequences of secrecy. Had the public been informed about the risks and hazards, the disaster's impact might have been mitigated. This tragedy underscores the importance of the right to know, especially regarding public health and safety. Transparency is not just a legal principle but a practical necessity for protecting lives and well-being. India's experience highlights the urgent need for comprehensive legislation recognizing the right to know. Such laws should clearly define classifications of information, establish procedures for disclosure, and hold the government accountable for secrecy claims. Effective appeal mechanisms and penalties for wrongful denial are essential to ensure that the right to information is meaningful and enforceable. While openness is vital, certain information must remain confidential for national security, foreign policy, or personal privacy. The challenge is to balance the right to know with legitimate needs for secrecy. Laws and institutions must ensure that secrecy is justified, limited, and subject to oversight, while promoting maximum transparency in all other areas. Conclusion: the right to know is a cornerstone of democracy and good governance. Legal frameworks like the Freedom of Information Act, the establishment of Ombudsman and Lokayukta, and the Central Vigilance Commission all aim to promote transparency and accountability. While challenges remain, the trend is clear. Societies are moving toward greater openness, driven by public demand and the recognition that transparency is essential for justice, participation, and progress.